You can be your own sacred object. You can sit on the altar all through the class.
Except I have one, so I can make it myself touch it.
Not all the time.
All right. Let's take a few deep breaths as we arrive. We're all coming from all sorts of things. Just start to notice your breathing and how you're feeling. It's very good to be together. So I'm going to do the prayer bowl here in a second. We're going to have just about a minute of quiet. And then after about a minute of quiet, and whoever wants to get up first can gauge when that minute is over. Whenever you're ready, just come and silently place your object on one of these tables. We have a table that, what does this table remind you of over here? Water. Okay, this is for our Zoom folks. There's one table that looks more like water. And then what about this table over here? So the elements, kind of like earth and fire. What else? What are the other elements? I can't even remember. Earth, fire, air. Well, that could be air over there too. So just wherever you feel called. But we're going to do this in silence. Okay? You'll have a chance to say something more about your object later. And folks at home on Zoom, just feel free to create whatever space, curate whatever space you want for your object to be in during the class, okay? And just give yourself a minute before you do that. All right. So let's center ourselves. Thank you. Thank you for collectively creating this sacred space that's stretching across space and time. And we'll add to this, we'll interact with it during the class. Right now, I'd like for you to take a few minutes. You have a poem there called Thread. Does everybody see that? So that's a prompt for your writing. And I wonder if someone would be willing to read it aloud. Someone be willing to read the poem aloud? Or would you prefer me to read it? Okay.
I think this might be more of a
Okay.
challenge
You
than
want me to hold it for you?
Okay, is this about the right place?
Here, I'll do it for you.
Okay.
So you don't have to worry.
All right. The contents of the thread I am hanging by are important to my survival. How strong is it? Is the fiber able to endure the strain, the stress? How frayed is it? How long can it hold on? It is a thread or a string, a rope, a cord, a conduit, a cable. This umbilical cord that tethers me to life comes from somewhere. It's connected to someone. Somebody. Is it wrapped around my neck? Is it twisted, knotted, kinked? Do I hold on? Do I trace it back to its source? The pulsing tissues of the blood-soaked fibers, the long, supple tentacle of my vitality, my aliveness, keeping me sourced with oxygen, plasma, iron, nutrition. Can you help me do more than survive? Can you pull me out of the cold caverns of my despair, my fear, my lonely soul? Can we wake up? Can we wake me up from the stupor of my trauma, my exaggerated startle response, my vigilance, my resignation, my lethargic panic? The plumbing needs flushing a strong cleansing current of IV fluids, salted, titrated for revival, not just survival, but for song, for singing with a cosmos, creative, supple, strong.
Thank you. So just look over the poem and maybe circle some words or phrases that really resonate for you. Don't think too hard about it. Just interact with the words and phrases with a circle wherever you feel some energy. And once you've had a chance to do that, again, we're not going to explain everything, but you might want to say a word aloud. You might want to just share the word aloud, not explaining it, just you might want to say a word. I'll repeat it after you so the folks on Zoom can hear.
The thread.
The thread.
It's connected.
It's connected.
Oxygen.
Oxygen.
Umbilical cord that tethers me to life.
Umbilical cord that tethers me to life.
Long, supple tentacle of my vitality.
Long, supple tentacle of my vitality.
Is it twisted, knotted, kinked?
Is it twisted, knotted, kinked?
And Robin?
Connected to someone, something, somebody.
Connected to someone, something, somebody.
My survival.
My survival.
Really wake me up.
Can you wake me up?
A conduit.
A conduit. Lynn Meacham.
For singing with the cosmos,
Singing,
creative, supple, strong.
singing with the cosmos, creative, supple, strong. Good, another more where that comes from. So just now look over those words that you circled and just pick one. Just put a check mark next to one. It could be a word, a phrase, but just one that particularly has energy for you. And we're going to take about 5 minutes now, and you're just going to do a free write. What do I say when people say, I don't know how to write? I say, just write, and it'll be just right. So thank you, Rachel. I'm glad you got it. Yeah, so this is not going to be graded. This is not going to be shared if you don't want it to. This is just for you to, writing is a spiritual practice. It's just a way to open up your own plumb line, your own thread. So 5 minutes of a free write, and I will let you know when that 5 minutes is up. All right, be finishing up your sentence or your thought. Take a minute, maybe just skim over what you read or read over it. Okay. Now those of you who are here in the room, you've got a strip of fabric. So that is for you to just, as the class goes on today, any threads that you that you feel, that you note. You can write those on the fabric, and we would love to use these fabrics on Easter as a part of the art installation. So these pieces of fabric will be hung on the tree branches that are in there, and there's some other creative stuff we're gonna do. Somebody's playing an orchestra. Is that you, Jane? That's a beautiful ringtone. I was like, are angels here? Just feel free to interact with that the way that you would like. You could draw pictures, you could just be colorful, you could put words, you could put phrases, whatever you want. It won't be something that we read out loud, but it'll be put into the ether of the sanctuary. And those of you at home, if you have a swatch of fabric or a piece of paper, anything, you can use anything. I know Robin used a piece of construction paper the other day. That's great, Alexandra. Just a piece of fabric or a piece of paper. Anything that you want to kind of use as a way, as just kind of a little palette for you to write things on, or draw things on while we're talking about the threads of where we've been together and what's kind of connecting us. So let's think back to the last 3 classes. Does anybody remember where we started this journey of feeling our way in the puzzle? Yes, Margaret?
You asked us what are feelings, and we did not get it.
I asked you what are feelings, and you did not get it. So what was the block or the thing that tripped us up around what feeling is? Anybody?
Wanting to know the words and what it all means.
Wanting to know the words and intellectualize it and making sure I have it right and I understand the assignment.
Yeah, so wanting to kind of understand something that's not understandable because it's pre-understanding, it's pre-conscious, it's even pre-subconscious. It is this primal embodied experience. It is the mode of our experience, right? Feeling is the mode of our experience, and it is physical. It is our bodies that's constantly having these experiences. Anybody remember what else feeling is? It's the mode of our experience, and it's another thing that can actually help us. Yes. It's the mechanism of our redemption. It is where the capacity for redemption and healing lies. So we started out with this primal physical thing that's beyond our consciousness, and it was confusing. And one of the most important things that we wanted to leave with, I remember Dot helped us with this, is that it's really not about understanding, but it's just make room for the fact that this is real, that we don't have conscious access to everything that's happening to us. And that consciousness is a tiny, tiny piece of our overall experience. And so it really foregrounds the body in a way that Western culture and Western philosophy has sidelined. The body has been sidelined. So process theology and philosophy brings the body back to the center, right? And so we make space for the fact that our body knows a lot more than our brains are conscious of. Okay? So then, anything else anybody wants to say about feeling? So then where'd we go the next week? Anybody remember the next touchstone? Where did we go? Yes, Mary, God. Yes. We talked about God. And what does God have to do with feeling? Do we have any words around how God is connected to feeling?
Can you give that to Margaret? Feeling is the image of God in us.
Yes, thank you, Margaret. So feeling is the image of God in us. Feeling is our imago Dei. So that means God is feeling. God is the primary instance of feeling. Does anybody remember any of the words or phrases or descriptive tropes that Whitehead used to describe God? Persuasive, thank you. God is persuasive, not coercive, not controlling, but luring. What else? What else did Whitehead say about God? Oh, yes, Robin Geiser. You're muted, Robin.
The poet of the world.
The poet of the world, one of my personal favorites. The poet of the world. God is the poet of the world. Anybody else remember any of the other ways Whitehead described God?
God is about transformation.
God is about transformation. God is the great companion who understands. Right? And then Whitehead gets into Whitehead's little technical physicist self, the mathematician in him, and he talked about the primordial nature of God and the consequent nature of God. These two aspects of God's character are not something that we experience as separate, but he separates them out so that we can understand that there are these aspects of God's nature that are engaged in a timelessness, in a access to beauty with a capital B that no other being has. That's the primordial nature of God. This all kind of encompassing, deeply relational and connected wisdom and beauty that God brings to every instance. And then the consequent nature of God is how God is impacted by us. So we are co-creators with God. God isn't unchanging. God isn't static. Our lives impact what God has to work with. And God impacts what our lives have to work with. The primordial and the consequent natures of God. Anything else about our conversation about God that really made an impression on you or that you want to say or put out there?
Robin?
Here I am again. The notion that prayer is so powerful
Yes.
with regard to the consequential
Yes.
God.
Yes. And we're going to talk a lot more about that in just a few minutes. That prayer is actually something that changes what God has to work with. And that God works with what is. So prayer changes what God has to work with. Anything else? Yes, Liz.
This all leads to, we're leading towards a zestful life.
Yes.
Thank you, Liz. So God doesn't just participate as a neutral, what Whitehead calls initial aim. God does not bring just a neutral energy to each moment. God brings our best possibility into every moment. And for God, our best possible unfolding is zest. Zest. is this kind of flourishing, where our best possibilities line up with actuality. So that's a good bridge for us to the next step on the journey, which was last week, which was when we got to talk about Ava. Yes. We all remember that. Thank you, Eleanor. So some people weren't here for the evil discussion. I'm sure they'd like to hear. So what threads do we have from that conversation, from that exploration? What made an impression on you around our conversation around evil? Or maybe if you weren't here and you did the reading, you have a question, but where are some threads for us? Yes.
Beauty.
Beauty with a capital B.
Yes.
Remember? And these correspond with something that Whitehead calls eternal objects. And they're not really objects. He just didn't have a better word. But there is this transcendent beauty with a capital B that is this actuality that only becomes concrete in our actuality. So there's an abstractness to it, but it's our best possibilities. So what else do people remember from the evil conversation? Here's Liz.
It's not polarized, it's not just good and bad.
Yes. Thank you, Liz. It's not polarized, it's not dualistic, right? It's not a binary. So what is it?
Continuum.
A continuum. Thank you. Who said that? Oh, thank you, Pamela. It's a continuum. And so if we're over here on the zest end of the continuum, right, this is our best possibilities. This is when actuality and beauty are lined up. Now on this other end of the continuum, what do we have on the other end than zest? Triviality, yes, triviality. And then this brings us to what is evil? How does it function in the world? Evil is destruction, violence, tameness, deprivation, insensitivity, privation. So on this end of the continuum, we're looking at situations where actuality is diminished. Not only are we not in our most zestful expression, but somehow something has been taken away. And that's what Whitehead calls what? Negative prehension, right? Now, what did we talk about last week in terms of just the nature of reality, of finitude? So evil and privation are built into just the way this thing works. Do we remember what Whitehead referred to that as? It was a double P.
Perpetual perishing?
Yes, perpetual perishing. Perpetual perishing. Anyone want to take a little stab at what perpetual perishing is? A few of you wrote me some good examples. Mary?
What did you just say?
Oh, well, it was the waterfall.
Yes, the waterfall was an example, and you emailed me an example. I'm trying to remember.
Human beings.
Yes. Yes, our cells are constantly dying. Our skin is sloughing off and becoming new. We make choices, right? So every time you make a choice, there's a loss of actuality and a loss of possibility. So there is this perpetual perishing. It doesn't mean that that's necessarily bad. It's just a fact. That every time something happens, something else didn't happen. Right? We talked about this on Sunday in worship. Wasn't it exciting to hear process theology in worship? Yay.
It was exciting for those of us coming to this.
Right. That was your little cookie that you get for being in this class. So is there anything else about evil or privation that anybody wants to raise up? Any question? Go ahead, Mary.
Just remember the idea of there needs to be a balance of positive and negative pretensions.
A balance, yes. So let's look at one of those examples. Let's look at something like freedom, right? We talked about freedom. And the interesting thing about freedom in this process cosmology is that freedom is both the condition of possibility of our thriving and our zest, and the condition of possibility of our triviality and privation and violence and deprivation. So freedom itself is really empty of moral content, right? But freedom itself is also necessary for us to even have a chance at beauty. Okay? And without God, do we remember this? That God in every instance is the offer of beauty, is the offer of zest, is the offer of healing in every moment. Without God, what happens to the universe? There's just one damn thing after the other. And then it just kind of winds down. It's entropy, right? There's nothing creating novelty. It's just the same thing over and over again. Yes, Pam, I'm gone.
Getting my Pams mixed up.
Pamela too.
Okay, Pamela too.
It really helped me when you talked about perhaps from the beginning how violence broke the human bond and there was a collective rupture, because I think about evil a lot, especially this past week, and how one thing forms another and the possibilities and those taken away, and even epigenetics.
Yes.
Like what someone's born with and their choices.
Marcia, we couldn't hear that.
Okay.
It was all scrambled. Could you repeat what was said?
Okay.
Oh,
Pam, try again. Or Pam, try again.
sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now.
Is
yes,
it
I
scrambled?
think it's because your hand was over at the top. Hold it down at the bottom. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, that's better.
Yes.
I just said what really helped was going back to the beginning, because I've been thinking about evil a lot, especially this past week, and how from the beginning there was violence which sort of broke the human bond and the collective rupture and the generations and the choices that were made and not made, and then epigenetics comes in where people are born with certain genes turned on and off, and that just really, really helped me a lot to sort of get all this, to get evil.
Mm-hmm.
So do you all, for those of you who weren't here last week, one of the big examples we dug into was critical race theory and what's happening in our culture around not wanting people to deal with the truth, right?
Because it's gonna hurt.
Because actually, and the irony of it is it's hurting us more not to know it, right? It's hurting us more not to know it. And so let's take something like the enslavement of Black people in this country. And let's think about evil and privation, okay? And the way that once one thing happens, there's not a meeting here tonight. If somebody comes in, there's not. So they're in the wrong place. So we can shut that door too, because
Out there?
yeah, you can shut that. When one thing happens, that then limits both actuality and possibility. So when an entire country, an economy, was built on terror, enslavement, violence, murder, genocide, free labor, what can happen from there is chronically deprived of some pretty important things, like human dignity. like a shared understanding of what trust is in a community, like a sense of safety, right? I mean, we could list out a lot of other ones, right? But when you think about something like the enslavement of Black people in this country in a process framework, then there is, if we want to have any hope of a beautiful future, a brighter future, a future of healing, we have to bring truth in line with reality. That's the only time when beauty can really align with truth, is when appearance and reality line up. Okay, and that means the reality of this multi-generational harm and multi-generational trauma, the economic realities, the physical realities, the spiritual realities, the relational realities, right? There are so many realities that we don't want to tell the truth about. So if you were in my Revelation class, you know that this thing about critical race theory and our obstinance as a society about really wanting to understand our history, that's an apocalypse. It is raising the veil and saying, actually, you say you want to know the truth, but this is really, or you don't. So take a good hard look at yourself. This is part of why you live in deprivation, people in America. And again, our deprivation has all kinds of different shapes and sizes, doesn't it?
because our choices.
It's because of our continued choices.
Which impact.
Yes, our continued choices, and our choices made in a vacuum. No, like it's our individual choices, it's our collective choices, it's our non-choices. Right? Yes.
I keep on wondering about how the people who don't want to study this deal with something like Black History Month. Do they just say, we don't need to have any Black history?
Yes.
Yes.
I doubt we can, with broad strokes, say the same, that the people say the same thing. But I mean, I've heard people say, why don't we have a White History Month? Have you heard that? I mean, I've heard, yeah. So, yeah. Yeah, that's right.
I think it's also used as an opportunity to say, oh, look at all the accomplishments of Black people, which means like they're doing okay. And we don't really have to worry too much about like all the things that are in people's way.
Marcia?
Yes. You couldn't hear it?
Marcia, that was very garbled. Could
Okay,
you
try
repeat
it
that,
again.
please?
Try it again.
I think I was holding it on the top
Yeah,
too. Just in terms of Black History Month, I mean, I think one of the things that people can use it for, if they don't really want to get into critical race theory and truth, is they can just use it to sort of sugarcoat history and say, oh, here are the highlights, here are the people that we as a society can really pat on the back. And then we get to pat all of ourselves on the back because like George Washington Carver, invented peanut butter. Like,
Right. It's the Barack Obama effect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
See Paul. I'm headed over to Paul Rogers.
Could you just repeat? You said when truth and reality line up, something happens.
Yes.
Because I'm a bit terrified that that's never going to happen.
Thank you, Paul. It's when truth and appearance line up, when reality and appearance line up. So remember that for Whitehead, truth is radically contextual, okay? But there is also this truth with a capital T. So there is a reality that we could say in our faith terms, only God knows. Because only God has this sweeping picture of possibility and actuality simultaneously. And so truth with a capital T is when what we let ourselves see lines up with what is real.
But that's not happening in the United States anymore.
Well, we could say contextually, we could point to some places where we do see eruptions of truth, where we do see things lining up in a way that truly are beautiful, even if dangerous or even if kind of terrifying. I'm thinking about back in COVID after George Floyd's murder, when people, it was out in the Northwest, when people were in the street with like bike helmets and the tops of their garbage cans, and they were like marching for Black lives, and it was just like everybody was just like they had to do something, and there was something true about that people were finally like, we can't just sit around like nothing is happening. And what do I have around? I've got my bike helmet, I got my thing to my garbage can, I'm going. I don't know what's going to happen. And again, that doesn't necessarily, that's not enough. But it is something that gives us something else to work with. When we see that, when we experience that, that's a whole nother set of things for us to prehend. Do you see what I'm saying? Whereas if people had just stayed in their houses and not said anything, that would be a deprivation. That would not be true. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, and that's an excellent example.
Okay, wait, let me get so they can hear you.
That's an excellent example. It's unfortunate that we have more examples like, oh, COVID's just going to be a little flu. I mean, that's about as far apart from any kind of truth and addressing what's reality. And I just keep on seeing more and more of those things. People who aren't willing to be educated and to learn the truth. And to me, it gets back to what you said last week, which is that when we are not able to be the best version of ourselves, that is what evil is. It's diminishing us through not being able to be educated.
Our true selves. So there are lots of ways that deprivation shows up in our culture. Some of it is not being informed, but some of it is being terrorized for just being yourself. Right? So there are all these different ways. And so then truth lines up with reality with some other, like we can give some other examples. And again, they're not enough, but they are threads. They are threads of vitality. When somebody is in a community where they can say, this is who I am, and I'm going to be honest, and here I am, and I'm going to trust you all with me, with myself. You know, there's something so beautiful, vulnerable, and true about that, and it's dangerous, right? Okay, see Pamela.
And then I just wanted to say what's going on in Israel, what we're seeing going on with the women in Iran and Afghanistan, they're putting their lives on the line.
I just wanted to mention Christian hegemony.
Oh, yes.
And that is so tied up. I mean, that feels like an underlying force that came early in our countries, and how nationalism got attached to that. I think a lot of white supremacy came from that. And if we look at the world, the majority of people in the world are not Christian.
Yes. So, are not Christian. So, capitalism is really the I don't know what word I want to use. All the words I'm coming up with are kind of crude. But capitalism was the seed of white supremacy, right? And then Christianity comes along and gives it a really nice shimmer to it, a divine, mandate that we know was happening in Europe as the slave trade began to show itself to be a very lucrative reality, right? So again, all of these things, and they get wrapped up in the more that culture kind of coalesces around these lies, the more those lies become very impactful. Look at how impactful white supremacy has been on American culture. I mean, just look at the depth of socialization. It is truly one of the most impactful and powerful social experiments ever conducted on the face of the earth that has impacted more lives than anything else, perhaps. And it was able, it's kind of like a snowball, right? It was able to get capitalism, and it was able to get Christianity, and then it was able to get patriarchy. I mean, there are all these things, and it gathers steam, and then it just becomes the air that we breathe. And in a process cosmology, we're not sitting here going, how did that happen? Right? We're not. We get it. Because that is the way the world is made. Yes, Marta.
Whoops, sorry.
Marcia, as you're saying this, I'm thinking of in REI, they tell us that an organized lie is more powerful than a disorganized truth.
Yes.
And,
That's process.
And that's so powerful because we see it every day. And when I'm hearing, the things that are happening outside of our country or in different places, and we get so hurt and so connected, it shows me, right, that we're feeling things. And I just also wonder when it's happening right here in our circle, when it's happening in our backyard, when it's happening in our community. Are we asleep? Are we anesthetized? What's going on?
Yeah. We enlarge the effectiveness and scope of our work and the entire task.
Marcia?
Yes.
We're not hearing very well right now.
Oh, you're not? Can you hear now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Through prayer, we enlarge the effectiveness and scope of our work and the entire task. Also through prayer, we bring to conscious realization the unity that belongs to all Christians by virtue of our identity in Christ. Finally, it is primarily through prayer that the reign of God finds an avenue for its finite mode of actualization in history. Now that's some process jibber jabber, but basically what she's saying is that prayer is a way that we can tune our vision, our hopes and dreams to God's vision and hopes and dreams. Prayer is a channel of union between the reign of God that is in God and the reign as it is reflected in history. We allow ourselves to become more open to God's aim in the quietness of prayer. Prayer is the road to renewed confidence in the guidance of God as we work toward the reflected image of God in our lives and in the world. The inward guidance of prayer and the outward guidance of Scripture converge, and our confidence is strengthened. The confidence gained through prayer increases our vision and our hope. Consequently, we act with more zest. Our effectiveness increases. Through prayer, we participate in each other's work, thus actualizing the unity that actually exists. God works with the world, for the world. Our praying changes the world. Our prayers give God a different world to work with. Now, this is all in Marjorie Suhaki's book. Now, that sounds wonderful, right? Yeah. Beautiful, great, yay, let's pray all the time. Now, let's go to this. Tell me what?
At the beginning, when you were reading,
yes.
It referred to being a Christian?
It referred to, yeah, she's writing from a Christian perspective, yeah.
So is she implying that people who are praying to God but are not Christians
No.
have their answers?
No, she's just writing in a Christian framework. Okay. But process theologians are some of the best interfaith thinkers that there are on the planet. That does not trip them up at all. But this book was written from a Christian perspective for Christian communities. Now, let's go to John Cobb's Introduction to Process Theology, where he talks a little bit about the church. So if prayer's so great, and if we can line up our, vision with God's vision, why is the church so messed up? Okay, so John Cobb has an answer for that. When movements stemming from Christ do not acknowledge Christ, they lose their commonality of purpose and issue in fragmentation of activity and understanding that becomes dehumanizing. And he's particularly talking about Christian churches in the American context. One reason for the separation of the actual effective presence of Christ from the celebration of that presence in the churches in America is that the churches lost their nerve.
Who's snapping? Come on.
In the face of 18th century rationalism and the dominance of scientific mentalities, Protestants followed suit after the Counter-Reformation. Of course, the church had always intended to be faithful to its traditions, but throughout the early and medieval times, this faithfulness was achieved by a dynamic process of rethinking the past in light of current experience and of the best knowledge available. On the whole, the most creative minds were the leading thinkers of the church. They did not experience the Christian faith as any more restrictive to their freedom to think honestly and openly than scientists today feel restricted by the methods and expectations of the scientific community. Similarly, the reformers found their new appreciation of Scripture liberating rather than restricting. It is only in more recent times, i.e., the last 400 years, that Christians have defined their beliefs in contradistinction to the most imaginative and critical thought of their day. Let's pause there for a minute. It is only in recent times, i.e. the last 400 years, that Christians have aligned their thinking in contradistinction to the most creative and critical thinking of the day. Boy, we see that, don't we? I mean, we see it. And people who still ask me, can I believe in evolution and be a Christian? I'm like, what? Yes! Have you read the Bible? Okay. Whitehead shows that any movement must either advance or decay. There is no standing still. The effort to repeat the past while holding the present at bay leads to decadence. The vitality and zest that were the essence of the worth of the past are lost. Don't hold on to the past, he's saying. What remain are only dying forms, that perpetual perishing. A movement, these are Whitehead's words, and this is on your sheet, preserves its vigor so long as it harbors a real contrast between what has been and what may be, and so long as it is nerved by the vigor to adventure. A living movement, like a living person, is continuously fashioning new syntheses of its own individual past and the new data with which the external processes endlessly confront it. So basically what he's saying, if you're not willing to change, church, you're going to die. Or, worse than dying, you're going to become destructive. You're going to become a source of deprivation. You're going to become a source of evil. Yeah. So think about that. It's powerful stuff.
Marcia,
Yes,
will you be also giving us that?
I can. I can copy that chapter. Whew, so this is a lot. And it's important for us to not get caught up in all the technical terms, but to just sink down into what we know about our bodies. Does your body stay the same? If you just sit still your whole life, are you going to be healthy? Okay. If you don't get new clothes, are you going to have appropriate attire as your body changes? So from one millisecond to the next, you're different. You're changing. And basically what Whitehead is saying is the church is the same. The church is not staying the same if it's truly being the church. If it's a church that won't change, then Whitehead would just come on and say it. You're not being Christ's church. You're being something else. You might be something else and you might do some good stuff. But you're not in Christ, because Christ is this eruption of truth, reality, and appearance coming together where we see God's love in the world with skin on it. This is the way God's love is deployed in situations of injustice, in situations of pain and suffering, in situations of institutional idolatry. This is how divine love moves. So prayer, again, is most impactful when it lines up with divine love. And prayer is something that can actually help us line up with divine love. One of the prayers I've been doing since COVID started is just every person that walks by me or drives by me. You know, I got to the point where if somebody drove by me with a bumper sticker that said stuff I didn't like, asshole, you know. Now I say, that's a child of God. I lift him up to your love and to your light and to your divine darkness. I know you hold him in the palm of your hand just like you do me. I say that about every human being. And it has really helped me just not feel so gross toward my fellow human beings. You know. And so that is an example of feeling being a mechanism of redemption and prayer being a tool of feeling. So I want us to take a few minutes now, and there's so much more we can talk about. So the first thing I want to say is, you may have noticed, but this really interests me and I love this stuff. So if anybody is interested in maybe over the summer having part 2, focusing in on one thing, this was a really cursory introduction, just get your feet wet. We could go into some deeper specific stuff. So I just want to put that out there. This doesn't have to be the end. I would love to have some more time just kind of exploring. The other thing is I will be sending out a follow-up email with some resources for you. Some resources for you to engage, not only readings, but some other things. So I would like to ask everyone to retrieve your object. And if you could, just in a sentence, and let's try to, again, minimize commas, semicolons, colons, and other things that make sentences run on. Just to share how this object speaks to you in terms of anything, a sentence, a word, or whatever about its sacred content. I would like to start with our Zoom folks and want to just give everyone permission to take care of yourself. If you need to go before we're done, we certainly understand. It's okay. If you can stay for it all, that's beautiful. If you can't, then just say a prayer for us, because that impacts us as well. We will close with prayer when we're done. So I'm going to start with Zoom, and I'm going to start with Nancy Gaskin. If you could give us a sentence about your sacred object.
This is a piece that was on my mother's dresser, my mother's and father's bedroom, all my life, and it became a place for us to share things with each other. We could leave things, we could take things, but it has a lot of value to me because of the connection that goes on and on.
Let's all just say thank you. Thank you. And now you want to invite someone, Nancy, on Zoom?
Yeah, Robin has a piece up.
This is a labyrinth with a little stylus that I was given by a friend from Fairfax Presbyterian Church when we moved away. And I have found that the labyrinth, either walking it or using the stylus to walk it, is a new way for me to find God.
Thank you. Everybody say thank you. Thank you.
Welcome. Meryl, you're holding something. How about?
This is my father's boatswain's mate whistle from World War II that he used when kamikazes were flying at him as he was sitting up in the crow's nest. And my father was in the Navy from age 16 for 8 more years through the entire war. He was on the USS Enterprise, which engaged in every battle except for one where they were a little bit too late. And he died when he was 35, and I was 9 years old. My mother just remembered this and found it and gave it to me, and it's one of the few items that I have as a physical remembrance of my dad.
Thank you. Thank you. You can invite someone, Marilyn.
Thank you.
Marilyn, would you like to invite someone?
Oh yes. Who needs to talk? Who wants to? Win, yes. Please.
This is Win, and I just really didn't know what I would show in a small Zoom box, so I took a photo of a metal hanging that I bought at 10,000 Villages in Montreat years ago, and it's on my wall. And in terms of tonight, I would say it's the rootedness of the spirit and the tree of life and its relatedness in its branches and all of us. I'll call on Alexandra.
Thank you. Thank you.
What I have here is a candle that I bought at Arca in New York, and that is a Ukrainian store And it is for me a symbol of the resilience and strength of the Ukrainian people in the midst of such a terrible time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll call on Pat.
Thank you, Alexandra. Being on Zoom, I'm not sure if you can see this, but this is a cross that I bought many years ago when I was visiting Asheville, and it's interesting that I happened to buy it here in Asheville. I was at a time of a lot of loneliness and despair over some very close deaths in my family, and I happened to be in a store and I found this cross, and it just kind of said, hey, buy me, so I did. And I tied this in with the poem Marcia on thread, because as I was doing my, my writing on it, I wrote this comment. I'll go fast because I know we can't be talking too long, but I said, this thread hanging around my neck is like an umbilical cord that reminds me of Jesus. Whether I'm in despair, fear, lonely, or just living and breathing each day, it revives me.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will call on Lynn. Beecher.
Yeah, thank you. This is a piece of coral that grew up around, wood, I always thought, but now I'm wondering if part of it is metal. But it's something I found from the ocean. It just reminds me of our origins, as a piece to look at. I found it beautiful and to hold. And it just, it just makes me feel connected to so many things. Okay, so Marilyn, would you like to go next?
Thank you. Marilyn went.
Thank you, Lynn. I already went.
Marilyn already went.
Yeah, I already had my time.
I'm sorry. Let's say, Tamara.
Mine is sort of I don't know if you can see it, it's a green rock. And I carry it with me sometimes. It just reminds me of the strength of God and the Spirit of God. And green is one of my favorite colors.
Thank you. Thank you, Tamara.
See, people, Kathy Meacham.
Thank you, Tamara. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, I have COVID after 3 years of clean living, so I'm glad to be able to participate. What I have is it's a shell that I found at the beach where I grew up in St. Petersburg, and I've been drawn every time I go. I sort of find which shells speak to me every time I go back to that home. And lately it's been broken shells where I can see the skeleton and the beauty inside. And it has holes in it, like my bones. And it's incomplete, and it's there are contrasts that are held together without breaking, and it's a symbol of beauty that is the creative and loving power of God.
Thank you. Would you like to invite somebody, Kathy?
Sorry, right, let's see. As anybody everyone else in the Zoom has finished. So I'll invite Paul Rogers.
Paul had to go, so there's a whole room of people. I don't know if you can see with my camera here.
See if I can get the room. It's hard to tell. I'm going to invite Eleanor, please.
Okay. You want to come get yours?
Yes, will you get this pastor?
Okay. Make sure you talk in that. So they can
So This is a jacket that I bought in Damascus, in Syria. And this is made of tiny little cross stitches. And what I love about it is that it's pieced. So it reminded me of process theology in the sense that the old pieces were kind of deconstructed to create something new. And for all I know, someone will at some point take this apart and create something new that I may not be there to appreciate.
Thank you, Eleanor. You can invite somebody.
Does everyone have?
Just ask somebody.
Oh,
Go.
I know Mary has something.
Mary, you want me to get it for you?
Sure.
What is it there?
This angel was given to me by a friend at my church in Greenville, North Carolina, back in the 90s. And it was around the time when we had Curcio there, and it was just a second spiritual awakening period for me. So I've just kept this since then as a reminder of my ongoing spiritual journey.
Mary. Thank you. And thank you to Eleanor, too. Everybody say thank you. Okay, you can invite somebody.
I don't have one, I was at the beach.
I don't have one anymore.
I didn't
Can you hold it
know,
up?
I didn't know to have one, but I always wear this little bracelet with a cross and a pearl that my granddaughter gave me. And
Can you
she
hold it up to your mouth? They probably
and
can't hear you.
And she said, because you love God so much.
Nice.
So,
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It's the cross on the table. If you would. This was given to me by my circle when we left Cary. And was made by one of the, we had a number of pastors that were there that kind of served as auxiliary people to do it. And he carved it and he made the string for it as well. So, it really is a very precious piece for me. It may not be monetarily important, but it's very precious to me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
I guess we'll just go down the table. You gotta remember to go back that way. Alan, do you have something you want me to get?
No, I don't. What I realized is, I think I have a lot of things in my head that are special. And I guess probably, and there's almost too many to mention, but probably the most precious ones are some times I had a long hiking in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, where I was by myself, people behind me and ahead of me, and just the smells and the sound of the wind and the birds and chipmunks and squirrels is just are unforgettably and especially precious.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. It's the piece of pottery right there. This represents prayer, friendship, and love to me. And what's on it is some wonderful words.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you. Everybody say thank you.
Thank you.
Margaret, what's your?
It's that scroll. It's not a scroll. So I was thinking how everything is sacred. So this is something I did today. It's just a whimsical piece of pastel, and it reminds me of being in the present and joy.
Thank
you.
And what is your
rings there?
These were given to me by my husband, Mac, and what a joyful, loving person and how much love he gave to me through all the years, 54 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What is it? There's two little woven things on the yellow.
So, my 16-year-old 10th grader is at Outdoor Academy, and when she left, she gave me this little bracelet that she has, a matching one that she's wearing while we're gone. But I wear 3 bracelets a lot that mean a lot to me. And as we were talking today, I felt like the one that I should have put the red one up there because in China they have a fable, legend, idiom, whatever you want to call it, where they believe that there are red strings going from your heart to somebody else, to anybody that you're going to meet, and the closer they get to you, the shorter the string gets. And so the image of the red thread has been a part of my journey with my girls all along. So these bracelets are sacred.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Now where's yours? Okay. I hope y'all aren't getting seasick. Okay.
So this is a dove ornament that one of my old coworkers gave me. Basically, I'm sure like everybody else, 2020 was an awful year for me. Basically, my entire life fell apart. And like the day before I got this, I found out that I was gonna have to move back here, which has ended up being really great. But at the time, it was devastating because I was leaving all my friends and everything I built. And the next day I went and she gave me this, and it was almost like a symbol of like how things are, as awful as it is, things are going where they need to be going. And, you know.
Thank you, Melanie. I'm glad you're here.
You need to go fetch.
What was
Mine's over there, it said no bug.
Thank you for being a courier, Marcia.
Is it this?
It's
No,
yeah.
okay.
Thank you. I actually I either forgot or never knew we were supposed to bring a sacred object. But actually I sat and thought, well, if I did remember, what would I have brought? And I thought probably a journal. So I already.
On the other table, it's a little shell. So I scrambled to, like Rachel, I didn't know, but we have shells around the house from our beach trips, and most of them are, ordinary shells. They just something that we wanted to pick up, and sometimes we'll put them back or keep them. But I am a student of geology, always have been, and shells remind me of process. Mm-hmm. And the processes that happen at the ocean, and I put it over on the more earthy side because usually we find them when we're near the shore on land, not in the water. So.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. You can come back up here. Jamie, where's yours?
It's that.
This?
This is a kind of a loosely designed article to represent Cindy Bourgeau's law, the Holy Trinity and the Law of Three. and it's about a period where a group of us were struggling with some difficulties, and we each decided to come back together with something that came to us during that period of time. And this came out of a relation club class I was in online, and the inside of it is also triangular, but it turns into the circularity of embodying in people's lives.
Wow. Wonderful. Thank you, Jane. That's beautiful.
It's a cross on the gold.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Did everybody say thank you?
Thank you.
This is a cross I brought home from Jerusalem. 10 years ago, I was living in the West Bank and able to go in and out of the old city of Jerusalem often. And I still can remember how it felt and how it looked.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this was a gift. It's a copy of a print and it's called African Healer. I don't know if you can see it. But it felt like process to me. It was vivid colors and symbols, and I have no words for it. It's an experience. And then the lady in the right-hand corner was also made by an acquaintance friend who is a member of the Tennessee Circle Dance group, and they're such a delightful, generous group, and I love to dance. It's the closest I feel to the spirit.
Thank you.
Okay, I have mine. Hold on, let me get through this. So mine is this little pin that says "Good Trouble." Can you see that? I don't know if y'all can see it. Can you see that?
Every day.
Okay, so and there are lots of things about it that have sacred meaning to me, but the thread to this class to me is just, this is something that a very, kind of heroic person said. And now it's become a way that we encourage one another in communities of faith. And if you remember at my installation, J. Herbert Nelson preached and told you that I would be making some good trouble. And a few months after that, one of the folks on session at the time, Tiffany Kennard, said, "I've had this for a long time, but I think you should have it." And so it just really feels like an icon, a marker of just this phase of being in a faith community with all of you. It's good and it's trouble and it's good trouble. Process theology can help us have confidence in the importance of good trouble. Well, thank you all for these beautiful threads of connection and blessings to you. Please leave your fabrics if you mind, if you will. Yes.
Did you have articles?
Oh yes, I do have articles. Thank you, Pamela. I'll put those on this table over here, and I'll email them to you all at home. But I wish there was like some dance or something we could do to close, but let's just get up and, say hallelujah and thank you. Thank you for all these eruptions of truth and beauty and deepening our connections with each other. I am very grateful. So God bless you and keep you.
Thank you.